Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let's go boldly wherever the film takes us. But let me issue a warning, particularly for this video. Not all bets pay the same. I'd rather make money with a losing record than to lose money with a winning record. I actively look for live underdogs. I believe, surprisingly enough, in this, the rematch of Wladimir Klitschko versus Tony Thompson. You have a live underdog. And how much of an underdog is he? I hope you're sitting down. Tony Thompson is at least a 14-1 underdog in sportsbooks throughout Europe. On one betting site, and don't bet on this site if it's not legal to bet on the site in your jurisdiction. On bet365.com, Tony Thompson is currently listed as a 14-1 underdog. Wladimir Klitschko, whose trainer is Emanuel Stewart, is widely regarded to be the best heavyweight in the world. I believe he's second best behind his brother, Vitaly Klitschko. This fight has the ultimate optical illusion. Wladimir Klitschko won their first fight by knockout. Right? The video shows Tony Thompson on the canvas in a fetal position after getting hit with a straight right hand. Right? I believe that this fight is too close to call. The bet I'm recommending, given these odds, and the odds matter, we're trying to maximize return while reducing risk. The bet I'm recommending is Tony Thompson to win the fight, hedged against the over 7.5 rounds at roughly even money. In my opinion, this is a close fight. Let's talk about why. First, let me say, Emanuel Stewart is an elite boxing trainer. But so too is Barry Hunter. You need to know that name. Boxing has a lot of trainers beneath the surface. Joel Diaz, Gabriel I can't pronounce the guy's name, Sarmiento, right? Virgil Hunter. You have an elite group of trainers beneath the surface who aren't getting attention because the public seems obsessed with the Emanuel Stewarts and Freddie Roaches. Just understand there are other trainers. Nacho Beristain, right? Their fighters come in, they know how to fight. They have great technique, right? If you look at the first fight between these two, understanding that Tony Thompson enters the fight, right? This is before the first round, with a torn meniscus. In other words, Tony Thompson, with his A game, beats the Tony Thompson who fought Wladimir Klitschko the first time. Right? What you're going to see is that Tony Thompson is doing just fine until the later rounds when, due to fighters stepping on each other's feet, and this happens when an orthodox fighter like Wladimir Klitschko fights an aggressive southpaw like Tony Thompson, right? The fighters get tangled up. You'll see that Tony Thompson hits the canvas, right? Not off a punch, but off of a wrestling match. And you'll see that Tony Thompson can barely stand after hitting the canvas. Now, Thompson's old school. Old school fighters will, have sprained ankles, will have broken bones, and they won't complain about it. Right? They'll lose a fight. They'll go into a fight injured. And let's stop kidding ourselves. Most fighters go into fights at less than 100%. And if you're in your late 30s and you have a shot at the heavyweight champion of the world, and you know that you need knee surgery that could KO you for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, just long enough for this heavyweight champ to move on to the next opponent, sometimes if you're old school, you take the fight. You fight through the pain. If you believe in your capabilities, you might even say to yourself, well, I'll beat this guy with my good knee. That's what Tony Thompson did. He hits the canvas after a wrestling match. When he gets up, it's clear that he can barely stand on 2 feet. This is before the knockdown. It's clear he can barely stand on 2 feet. It's clear that after going with Wladimir Klitschko for several rounds, and after having the most competitive CompuBox numbers against Wladimir Klitschko for the last several years, and after hanging in this fight, Tony Thompson gets wrestled to the ground, not intentionally, but it's the same result. He gets wrestled to the ground. When he gets back up, and all of this is on tape, you can tell that his bad knee is really bad. He doesn't have the leverage. He stops playing the angles. He's right in front of Wladimir Klitschko. He then slips up, and Klitschko's able to land that straight right. Well, let's talk about what happened before that moment, right? Because it's a pivotal moment. And understand, Thompson had surgery shortly after the fight on the torn meniscus, right? Before that, the fight was fascinating because Tony Thompson, a southpaw, can neutralize Wladimir Klitschko's left jab in his sleep, right? As I see it, Klitschko has 3 big weapons. A spectacular left jab. It's spectacular. A spectacular left hook. And a spectacular straight right hand. He's the heavyweight champ for a reason. He has multiple tools. My point in this video is just to say that Tony Thompson, because he's a southpaw, because he's advanced, because he plays the angles, Tony Thompson can neutralize 2 of the 3. He can take away Wladimir Klitschko's left jab. He can take away Wladimir Klitschko's left hook. Right? Wladimir Klitschko, as it is, in my opinion, and we're hard on boxers here. This is not a rah-rah site. Wladimir Klitschko can't fight inside. So what Tony Thompson does is he literally disarms 2/3 of Wladimir Klitschko. He then makes it competitive because Thompson himself is really a knockout puncher. Just look at his string of KOs. And I'm not talking about from 5 years ago. I'm talking about in the last 2 years. Right? So Tony Thompson is literally trying to set up an angle where he can batter Wladimir Klitschko. And what you need to know about Tony Thompson is he's not really a southpaw. He's an orthodox fighter fighting out of a southpaw stance. So he doesn't even have to lean in to get his dominant hand on Wladimir Klitschko. He can literally batter Klitschko with that lead left. And, with his lead right hand, because he's really a righty, right? And because fighters fighting out of a southpaw stance fight orthodox fighters, more than orthodox fighters fight fighters fighting out of a southpaw stance. Tony Thompson knows the angles better than Wladimir Klitschko. Understand that first fight, and forget what the judges were scoring. Who knows what they were scoring? That first fight was highly competitive. I want you to look at the 8th round of that first fight. You're going to see that Tony Thompson is still trying to bring it. This is 8 rounds in against Wladimir Klitschko. Also, given Tony's punching power, right? Again, just look at his knockouts. And given Wladimir Klitschko's chin, down against a host of guys, right? Layman Brewster, Sam Peter, just to name 2 guys in the last few years. There is simply no way that Tony Thompson isn't vastly underrated at 14-1 and higher odds. Right? This is a severe casino mispricing. Let me go one step further. The over-under is awfully low. 7.5 rounds, the midway point of the 8th round, is actually shorter than their first fight went. Think about it. Right? And because Tony Thompson neutralizes Wladimir Klitschko's left hand, and I mean entirely, right? Then this fight's going to go a few rounds. You know, unless Wladimir Klitschko comes out and magically is able to land a straight right, something he wasn't able to do until after Tony re-injures a leg with a torn meniscus. Right? Wladimir Klitschko really was unable to get inside on Tony Thompson. Think hard about Wladimir Klitschko too. He's not a guy who throws a lot of body punches. He falls into, and let's take on Mount Rushmore boxing here. He falls into the Muhammad Ali school of boxing. Right? Great fighter who doesn't throw body punches. Right? You need to think about that when you're comparing, by the way, a Wladimir Klitschko or an Ali to a fighter like a Sugar Ray Robinson. Right? You need to consider things like this. So since Wladimir Klitschko is going to have his left hand taken away, and since Wladimir Klitschko is not a body puncher to begin with, and since Tony Thompson is an advanced fighter who knows how to play the angles, I like the over 7.5 rounds. I'm expecting, even if Wladimir Klitschko comes out and wins the fight, I'm expecting this fight to go several rounds. I believe the over 7.5 is a great hedge for Tony Thompson winning at 14-1 and higher. Understand what we mean by 14-1. Bet 100 to win 1,400. Right? At that point, you could back out a $100 straddle and still be up $1,300. That's how severely mispriced this fight is. So to sum up, going where the film has taken us. Because I believe Tony Thompson, and look at the CompuBox numbers. Right? Look at the CompuBox numbers off their first fight. Because I believe Tony Thompson gave Wladimir Klitschko the most competitive fight Wladimir Klitschko has had in several years. And because the film tells me that Wladimir Klitschko can't land his left effectively against Tony Thompson, and because I believe Wladimir Klitschko can't fight inside and doesn't go to the body, and keep in mind, that doesn't make him a bad fighter. He's still a great fighter. Just like Ali didn't go to the body, but was a great fighter. And if you're an Ali fan, as an aside, just tell me the fight where Ali landed a lot of meaningful body punches. Okay, but all I'm saying is, in boxing, you can be a great fighter by doing 2 or 3 things phenomenally well. right? In other words, you can be a great fighter without being a complete fighter. Well, here, because Wladimir Klitschko is a great fighter who's not a complete fighter, and because Tony Thompson has figured out how to neutralize 2/3 of Wladimir Klitschko's best punches, I like Tony Thompson to win this fight, straddle against the over 7.5 rounds. Okay? Just keep in mind, the first fight went longer than 7.5 rounds. And in the first fight, if you know Tony Thompson, and if you look at the film of that first fight, you'll see that because of a leg injury, Tony Thompson was not Tony Thompson. Thompson's fighting for one reason only, and that's to be heavyweight champion of the world. And I believe he has an excellent shot here in a fight I consider to be a toss-up. Somehow the casino's giving you 14-1 odds that you can easily hedge with an over 7.5 rounds, right? But be careful. You need to keep in mind the risk involved. If Wladimir Klitschko comes out and destroys Tony Thompson in less than 7.5 rounds, you lose it all, right? If you're a gambler, understand the risk. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for watching.